Hey everyone. Today we're sharing a special encore presentation of episode 80, Sibling Abuse, A Story of Recovery. We've had a lot of new listeners join our community recently, and this particular episode has seen a huge surge in downloads lately. Sibling abuse is a topic that's so often overlooked and shrouded in silence, but the response to this episode proves just how many people out there need to hear this story of healing. Whether you're finding this episode for the first time or you're returning to it for comfort and validation, we wanted to bring this vital conversation back to the top of your feed. Before we dive in, a quick reminder that this episode discusses emotional and physical abuse. Please take care of yourself while listening. Here is episode 80.
Hey, everyone. In a continued effort to elevate the voices of those who have experienced childhood and or adolescent sibling abuse, I'm with a survivor today who would like to share her story. And I'm thrilled that we can offer her the platform to do so. She's going to remain anonymous. Her name is Rachael, and she is a licensed clinical social worker who has been practicing in the mental health field for over 20 years and specializes in treating individuals with eating disorders. And she's also an internal family systems level 1 trained and EMDR certified practitioner. So, she's well versed in her experience, I assume, because we have to do a lot of work on ourselves in this field in order to be prepared to manage the emotional lives of others. And I just want to welcome you, Rachael, for being here and for braving the experience through the experience and being here to share your story with others in the hope that we can continue to enlighten people that sibling abuse is a real and very serious phenomenon, and also in hope of providing validation to those who have lived through it. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. So I saw initially, I found you, Dr. Meyers, on TikTok, and in seeing one of your posts about sibling abuse, it activated a younger part of me who was like, oh, this is something that people are talking about now, because throughout my career, that was really never discussed. People don't even really in assessments ask many questions and seeing new clients about whether or not sibling abuse took place in a family. It usually is more about parental abuse. So in seeing that, the part of me got activated, and I was so happy when I reached out to you that you could speak with me. And then here I am on your podcast. So that was pretty I think serendipitous.
That's pretty awesome. I guess that speaks to the power of social media, because I was a resistant TikToker, and I thought, what a way to reach a large audience. And the reception has been kind of unbelievable in the sense of, wow, how great it is to reach people, but also unbelievable in regard to how many people this touches. So even that opening that you just said, I'm curious to know, how did you determine that what you experienced was abusive?
So I think I determined throughout grade school and seeing the way other people interacted with their siblings. It sort of struck me early on that maybe this wasn't a normal way of interacting, but it was pretty much a daily occurrence for me in our house. So to take it back further, my father left our family when I was about 4 and my brother was 7. And prior to that, there were some instances where, he was rougher with me maybe, but initially he was a very good caretaker as a sibling. When my father left, I think somewhere, either explicitly or implicitly, he got the message that it was his job to take care of everybody at 7 and then to be fully responsible for me. And it seems like, again, this is adult me looking back. As a child, I didn't realize that he felt parentified and sort of put upon, and all of the anger and frustration, along with not knowing how to regulate his own emotions. I became the literal punching bag for that. And it wasn't as though it wasn't seen. My mother kind of normalized it and minimized it because of her own experience with her older brother, who they were about 4 years apart. My brother and I were about 3 years apart. So very similar pattern taking place. And she would say things like, I'm sick of it. You guys can just kill each other. I don't care. Like, just go at it. And me being smaller usually didn't come out winning in fights. So it would be things like he would wake me up for school and do that in a way that was super dysregulating, like loud music, throwing covers off, yelling, which again, not super big deal, but it would be anytime he would get upset about anything. I was going to be, it didn't matter if I tried to talk to him nicely or if I tried to not engage or sort of, it's funny how you learn how to do these things even as a kid, like lean into it instead of pushing against. I would still get hit either way. And we're not talking like pushing or whatever. It would be closed fist punching, pinching, just anything to dominate until he felt that he was regulated and satisfied with whatever. And then I would have to kind of like deal with my own emotions.
Well, what you're talking about is extremely common because it seems as though those who have been victims of sibling abuse develop later in life a sense of hypervigilance. And just for that reason, exactly, is because you never know where the next blow is going to come from. And you try, I think our instinct is to mitigate it. And if I can figure out what I'm doing, even though there's nothing you're doing, but we believe that and think if there's something that I'm doing to precipitate this kind of onslaught or behavior or emotional abuse, whatever it is, then I can gain some sense of control over it. But the reality is there is no predictive source because it's not coming from you, right? It's the upset is living within the aggressor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's so true. I think I kind of got defeated in figuring out that there was really nothing that I was going to do that was going to change it. And nobody was coming in to save me. Like it was normal in my family. It was not a big deal. I was being dramatic, and it was very clear that my brother had a lot of emotional issues, but my mother did not want to get him any help for it. So it was sort of just like, okay, well, we'll just kind of let this go. And, so to give a little context to my mother is that she was somebody who gave us the message very early on that life wasn't fair. And she had a mother herself. So comparatively, my mother was great compared to her mom. So she had a mother who was very abusive to her. And my mom ran away, got married at 19. First husband shot her, tried to kill her, not my father. So by the time my dad came into the picture and she had kids and then he had left her, she had been through so much trauma in her life that was sort of, she was at her capacity most every day. And I know that now as an adult, but then I was like, you're on your own, kid. That was sort of the feeling, and so being raised by somebody like that, unless you were literally being killed, there was no validation. Because everything was sort of compared back to her situation. So when she would see things that would happen between my brother and I, to her, that really just wasn't a big deal. Like we're all going to have emotional trauma. We're all going to have stuff happen and you just learn to deal with it. You get 2 minutes to feel bad and get it together. So,
wow, well, that's really interesting. So she was a victim of intimate partner violence. And her gauge was completely off in terms of what's acceptable and not acceptable. Mm-hmm. Even though I assume when you said it wasn't your father, that when she married your father, there wasn't abuse in that relationship. Is that correct? There
was not physical abuse, but there was emotional abuse because he had so many affairs. It just wasn't present by the time I came around. Okay. And so there was this, he would say things to her like, you're a scarred up cripple and nobody will want you. And the thing is, I would know all of this because she didn't have the boundary not to be sharing stuff. So like, very complicated family
Well,
history.
I think you're painting a very clear picture about how abuse became normative within this family structure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So comparatively, my situation wasn't that bad. And maybe part of her was thinking like, hey, this is preparation for life. I don't really know what she was thinking. But, it went on for years. He would be the one, a lot of times we were kind of latchkey kids at a certain point where, he and I would be the only ones who were home. And there would be summers where every day, he would be making me play games and like hitting me in the face with a basketball or punching me in the back or every day. Like I'd learn to put makeup on to cover up that I was crying. And my mom would come home and say, what did you do to her? And he would, and that was it. There was no.
Like, oh, what did you do to her? Like, here we go again. Not like literally wanting to understand what's been happening here.
Yeah. Because, again, if I cried, it was all over my face. I'm very fair skinned and my nose gets all red and it stays that way for hours regardless. And it was just like, I learned that like, you need to cover it up and get it together, because if he would happen to get a consequence, then it was an even bigger punishment for me. So it wasn't really worth it to say a whole lot about it, because I wasn't getting away from this no matter what. Like, even after I left the house at 19, the last time he physically put his hands on me, I was 22 years old. So that was our last physical fight. And we were out somewhere, and, I wasn't really drinking a lot, but he was, and I knew it wasn't a great situation. And his marriage wasn't working out. And I said something like, well, maybe you two would be better off apart. And that was all it took. And he headbutted me. And this is in a public place, headbutted me, grabbed me by the throat. And I think a part of me took over, that I wasn't present anymore. And I just punched him back in the face, and it stunned him. And, it was this whole big thing. And eventually, right after that, I had made the decision I wasn't going to speak to him anymore, because I was just done. Like, there was a part of me that snapped, and I was like, I was so ashamed that I hit him. I was so embarrassed. But coming to realize, as I do now, about the different parts that we have, especially when we've been traumatized, I realized it wasn't me. Like
you stepped out of yourself.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you were old enough and in a different place to be able to fight back and try and self-protect in a way that you can as a child.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's, as weird as this sounds, to your credit. And you're carrying, I don't know if you're still carrying the guilt or, feeling like, who is this person? I don't want to be this person. And this person is foreign to me, but, it's fight or flight, right? And now somehow something happened where your adaptation shifted.
Yeah. I was like, it was like, enough, no more. This is it. And whether this ends in me going to the hospital or whatever it ends in, this is done, And I made it clear, like, we're done, And then something happened with him, and that's his story to tell. But it made it so that I came back into the picture, and I was already working in mental health at that part. And I finally started getting him help. And he was receptive to it. And so we've gotten to the place now, I'm in my 40s, as is he, and we have a good relationship, and he has apologized. And I really do feel good about it now. And I think it's just this unspoken thing that he knows that under no circumstances would that ever, I don't even think he would want to, or it would cross his mind anymore. But it was rough for a lot of years with him.
Perhaps we'll come back to the rough years, but this is really curious, this piece of making amends, when he was able to acknowledge or own what he had done to you and the impact. And did that come from you trying to communicate that to him, or did he come to that on his own?
I think a little bit of both. I think what happened was that, he had his own children, and there were some things that occurred there, and some things that happened with, his first wife. It's really amazing how our intergenerational patterns in our family are so strong. Things that have happened with him versus with our parents. And through doing a little bit of work on himself, I think he came to realize, like, he knows the magnitude of what he put me through,
Okay.
And that was meaningful.
That was meaningful. Yeah. What was the time period between the cutting him off and the reunification?
So the reunification has been, I would say, we're probably at the best place we've ever been over the years, because we can talk more openly about things. But it was probably, I would say, maybe 3 months after we had stopped talking that something happened with him. And it kind of, so again, he had tried to take his own life. It was unsuccessful. Of course, as always, I was the one that had to go to the hospital and see him on the ventilator and take care of things my mother couldn't. It was, I lived closer, so it was just easier, but really she just couldn't handle it. So I showed up, and where I was working, I was able to get him in and get him some help. And that was the start of it. But it's been a lot of ups and downs for him over the years with other choices that he's made in relationships. But we finally gotten to the place that we could speak openly about it without him getting angry or wanting to shut down or, and I think that really happened. I got sick with breast cancer when I was 29. And after that, and like everybody in my family couldn't really handle that. And, thankfully, I have an amazing husband who I do want to talk about because he's part of what has helped me to heal.
Okay.
Yeah. So once that happened, and I kind of said to my brother, like, if I get sick again, you can't just avoid me because you can't handle it. And then we started to talk more openly about things and the things that he was sorry about and the magnitude of that. And so it never really mattered to me that I didn't have validation from my mother about how bad it was because I had it from the person who was doing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was very healing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of this understanding that we can be close, but that, if anything ever, if there was even a whiff of that ever again in our relationship, that is it, that we would be done. And
so not only has he acknowledged it, but it sounds like he's managed the intensity of his anger.
Yes.
And that's not present in his life anymore or his relationship to you.
It's not present in his relationship to me. And I think he's to the place now where it's not as present in his life anymore. But there have been many other things that have happened separate from me that his anger and his problems in that area have been a detriment to him. And when I look at it now from this perspective, I really feel for him because he needed help.
I have to say, I think that's an incredibly generous lens, and I think it's accurate. But I don't know if a lot of survivors can get to that. And it almost feels like a gift. I think I've mentioned in a previous episode, I'm also a survivor. And I think forgiveness is very healing for oneself. It's not about the other person. And the idea that these perpetrators or aggressors, or however you want to term them, are people with limitations. Just like the parents involved. It's very easy to be angry, of course, at the adults who have a responsibility to protect their children from harm. On the other hand, a lot of them are doing the best that they can. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. I'm not excusing. That's what I always say. It's like, I'm not trying to excuse, I'm trying to understand. And people are inherently limited. We all have limitations. And sometimes, unfortunately, those limitations come with huge repercussions for the people that they're responsible for or that they are in relation with. So to be able to see that, I think really arms you with the ability to move forward.
Yeah. It was sort of like I had to make a choice because in my family, I could choose to have nobody. I really don't have contact with my dad's side of the family, and I don't have any ill will towards him, but we've just never built a relationship. And so I don't see a point as an adult, at this point. My mother has passed, and in her passing, it's also been something that's been a relief for my brother and I, because there used to be a lot of like splitting between the two of us or trying to pit us against one another, but also making us feel responsible for one another too. So she didn't really have to do that job. And I can kind of see that now. I'm really grateful to my career because it's helped me to be able to look at my family in a different lens. And I see that like she was always operating from a place of trauma and fight or flight and, very limited, small window of tolerance. And his window of tolerance is very small. And I've really had to do a lot of work on mine over the years because of, the things that I've been through. And one of those things is sort of having a more avoidant attachment. And that's sort of where my husband has come into play because we've been together for 18 years and married for 16. And him just being consistent and, positive regard for me, regardless of how I'm presenting. And that has made a huge difference in my attachment issues. So that was a lucky pick on my part. So, I don't have children. That cycle can't continue. I've never picked a partner who's been abusive. And so that cycle hasn't continued. But it wasn't like I was given a lot of support in making those healthier choices either.
How do you think you landed a man like this when, it's a long time ago, you hadn't quite worked through this yet, I'm sure, because you hadn't yet embarked on your career that helped you to unfold this, which I want to come back to as well. Yeah. So how did you make yourself open to a intimate partner who was emotionally available to you, because I talked on my other episodes about the ramifications that often show itself in intimate relationships, and a difficulty trusting, and a difficulty making oneself available, but also choosing partners who are emotionally available, because we tend to repeat what we know, and we attach to figures who generally won't feel satisfying at best.
Right.
At best.
So I have to say, I was married once before when I was 23 to 24. It didn't last long, but it was somebody who I was with from the time I was 19 until I was 24 when I got divorced. And so that wasn't the best pick. And I think I learned a lot from that. And in fact, it was actually my brother's best friend. And my brother had said, don't do this, but I had no trust in him. So I was going to do what I wanted to do. I mean, that's the one thing about me that I've always had very solidly, is this part that's like, I don't really care what anybody else is doing. I'm going to do what I want to do. And to tell you the truth, I think I don't really know how I got lucky enough to meet somebody who could be like this very steady influence, very healthy family, pretty normal dynamics there. It was an adjustment at first because I didn't trust it. All these people who were so genuinely nice and like didn't want anything in return. It was very weird. It took me a long time.
Yes. And it's uncomfortable because we tend to be drawn toward what's familiar, and familiarity is comfortable. So even though it's like, oh, this is really pleasant, it's also like stirring, right? This doesn't feel right.
Yeah. When's the other shoe going to drop? What are these people's motives? My husband's very much somebody who will start everybody off at 100, and they're all great. And I was not coming from that perspective at all. And I've gotten much better at that.
They're starting at 0 and they gotta prove themselves to get up to 20.
Yeah. But he was just, I don't know how to describe how I just knew that he would be a good option as a partner. I think because of what I had been through with my brother, if there were ever any signs of something physical not being right, I would have been out of there in heartbeat. That was never going to be something that I would, and, raised voices or slamming doors. I think when we first got together, we had an argument where he slammed a door and I said to him, you can do that, but you could do that with somebody else, because that's not going to be, I need peace in my environment. And, it's never been an issue since.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really fantastic. Have you actively done work on yourself regarding being in a relationship and being comfortable in a relationship and all of the aspects that come with it, from, dependency to trust to, feeling a sense of loyalty, all of it?
Yeah. I mean, I have done therapy in the past, but I really feel like the most work that I've done has been on sort of evaluating myself and being able to take a step back and noticing my own patterns and behaviors. Because I am still somebody who really likes to process on their own. I still don't rely on people 100% to like really give them everything that's going on, but the brain's always going. There's definitely times where I feel challenged by people needing me still.
Needing, is that what you said? Needing
needing me, still not so much in work, but more in my personal life, because again, since I look at things more from a parts perspective, I have some amazing manager parts that help me do my job. My therapist part is not burdened, so there's not really any work to do around that part of me. And so before I do a session with somebody, I always try to check in with my own system and make sure that I'm okay. And if there's any parts that are not okay, and if they need something, try to give them a little attention, especially if I know it's going to be more charged and what I might be dealing with and talking to a person about that day. But I think what I have been through gives me also this really unique ability that, although it's maybe not fair that I had to have such a heightened awareness of what people might be feeling, or being able to read a room very easily, like take the temperature of how people seem, it's also been really useful in this line of work, because I pick up on things that even via telehealth, which is how I work now, that I'm not saying the average person might not, but I tend to notice a change in affect or facial expression or something, maybe a little bit more, just because that part of me is still present too. That's,
you're highly attuned to the needs of others. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. And that goes back to what we were saying earlier about wanting to anticipate the moods, reactions, responses of other people, right? So that you can maybe, we were saying fend off, but also please.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And that kind of thing actually, can serve a clinician really, really well, because you are highly attuned to other people's emotional lives and reactions. And I guess then the next step would be then how do you depersonalize that?
Right.
Right. When you see certain things or feel certain things.
I just feel like the work that we do is a real gift, because everybody has a story and everybody wants to tell their story. Or feels validated. I don't want to say everybody. There's probably some people that don't want to tell their story. I can appreciate that too. But just, having somebody who can, that they know is consistently, reliantly, like we're there for them, has also been healing for me too. Because it's like, I get the opportunity to be the rudder for people that maybe I didn't have, or there were parts of me that didn't have. So that's a nice gift.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I wonder if that also kind of gives you permission. The more that you are able to offer that to other people, it gives you permission to receive that as well. When you can see how beneficial it is, how much people appreciate that. And people also enjoy giving. There's a lot of people who need, but they also enjoy giving. And I know that people who have survived sibling abuse often don't let other people in. And I think that people can become frustrated by that. Because people generally want to get to know you.
Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing I'll say is that having a good sense of humor has also helped me to connect with other people too, in a way. But there are times, like with my friends, I definitely rely on them and share with them what's going on. Clients, no, because that's not appropriate. But I think that they know, like, I can tell that people appreciate what I do for them, and I appreciate being able to be in their lives, and we have that kind of relationship. But truly, when I say it's not all down to one person, but having this healthy long-term relationship with my husband has really allowed me to let people do nice things for me. Like getting sick with cancer when you're 29 and in your grad school program, and having, major surgeries and doing chemo, and you have to rely on people. And I had to. I didn't want to. I still at that time would go to chemo appointments on my own when I could, and because that makes me feel secure, like to be able to do my own thing.
Right.
But it definitely changed.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? It was a forced vulnerability. You were forced into it and had no choice but to be tended to.
Yes, I feel like the universe does that. It's like, you'll get this. You will have to get this because, you weren't listening before, but let me just give you a little nudge. You're gonna listen now.
Yeah. I just want to revisit something that you said earlier about, I think you were using it as an example of what your brother would do to you. And it was striking to me because I thought, people who are listening to this might not feel like that's sibling abuse. Like, give me a break. All siblings do that. And that give me a break thing is something that I contended with when I was embarking on my research. And I was telling people, and this was, 15 plus years ago, 20 years ago. I lost track. It was a long time ago. It was before sibling abuse, became really known. There were maybe 5 articles out there on it. And I was telling people, oh yeah, I'm doing this study on sibling abuse. And they would say, oh, you mean sibling rivalry? And I'd say, no, not sibling rivalry, sibling abuse. Oh, give me a break. Everybody fights with their siblings growing up, right? So I just want to, that's why I was struck by the example that you gave of being in bed and having your brother kind of rip off the covers off of you. And, somebody could hear that and think, oh, big deal. You tell me, because I also want to weigh in, if it's different than your perspective, about why that felt abusive.
I mean, because it was the start of another day of whatever hell he was going to inflict on me. And I knew it, oh, good, here we go again, And it's just so dysregulating to your nervous system to wake up with somebody screaming or ripping, And when you do that for years, it becomes complex trauma. It just, even to this day, I love to have a slow morning. But unfortunately, I have 2 French bulldogs that don't allow that. So we're up, with a different kind of yelling in the morning.
Right.
But yeah, it was just well, and I sort of discounted it when I was saying it to you, because I can imagine other people being like, well, that's really not that big of a deal. But that was one thing. And I don't want to say that it was like premeditated on his part of like, I'm going to start her day off, ruining it like this. But it was just the lack of consideration, or how little I meant, like, that I was a person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, as you said, first of all, it's an incredibly uncomfortable way to wake up. Right.
Yeah.
It's like, the joke on old television shows with them blowing the trumpet in your ear. Right. And the body like literally reacts and goes spastic to the response. Right. It's, as you said, incredibly deregulating. It's also an incredible violation of your space, of your body, of your emotional state, your mental state. And you're saying this was also a precursor to what was to come the rest of the day or later in the day. So it was a setup, and it was almost like a warning. It was almost like a Pavlovian reaction.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the first thing, and something's coming next, right?
Yep. Be ready. Be on guard.
Ready. Be ready. Exactly. But I think irrespective of if there wasn't a follow-up, right? If there wasn't something to occur later in the day, it is still an abusive act, because it leaves you, the person who experiences this, the victim at the time, rendered helpless, violated, and powerless. So, because you can't stop it, right? This person comes into your room, rips off the thing, yells at you, and gets to leave. And they're calm as they are removed from the situation, or remove themselves from the situation, and you're left with the emotional repercussions of it. So, yeah, for folks out there listening, there are acts that are violating and intrusive. That's the word, intrusive. So I'm glad that you shared that. Yeah. So tell me, you said you came across me through TikTok.
Yeah.
What did you hope for yourself and or others by sharing your story?
I think I just, well, other people aren't aware of this, but I made a little TikTok in response of just sort of showing a younger version of me as like a 4-year-old when things kind of really kicked off. With him, and just sort of how she felt seen. And so I was thinking, if there are other people, whether they're in this field or they're not in this field, who have had that experience, just let them know that you're not alone. Other people go through this. And, other people who may work and have their careers in mental health, whether you're a provider or somebody seeking services, we've all been through things in our life. And I think sometimes that's important too, to remember that we do all have our own stories. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to connect or have people feel heard or seen, or to educate on the fact that this is something that happens, and that abuse isn't only something that can be inflicted by an adult. It can be inflicted by somebody who is same age as you, younger than you, a couple years older. And I think in a lot of ways it's worse, because you just can't get away from it until you can move out and have your own space. Like, you are stuck in that situation. So if there are people who are listening who still feel stuck, I guess it's also hope that it can get better.
It can get better. It can definitely get better. And also for people who feel stuck and who might be listening to this, is you have to use your voice. You have to exercise that voice and let people know what's happening outside of your home. The people outside of your home. You have to let know a trusted mentor, a teacher, your physician, your friend's parent whose home you feel safer in than going to your own, whatever it might be, right? Tell somebody. If they don't understand it as something significant, you make sure that they do. Right. It's tough, because you don't want to make it incumbent on a victim to have to prove themselves and, prove their story. But we're still living in an age where this remains under the radar. I think it's getting much more visible, but it's still under the radar. And so it's help is out there. And you can always certainly email me. You all know where to reach me. I'll put that in at the end again, and I will find you a resource. So, Rachael, thank you so much. This was very powerful to hear your story. And I hope it resonates with some folks out there, whether they are victims, survivors, aggressors, or just people in the community who need to keep their eyes wide open.
Thank you so much for listening to this encore presentation of Rachel's story. If it left you reflecting, we want to remind you that you're absolutely not alone in your thoughts, feelings, or fears or experiences. And if this conversation resonated with you, I want to invite you to take the next step with our community. On June 15th, two of my former students and I are launching our brand new blog at bpp3voices.com. That's BPP number 3voices.com. It's called Between Practice and Purpose and reflects the real life mess and meaning of life that will really resonate with most of you. It's also about finding meaning and learning as we move through our work in social work, a helping profession. It's not about having all the answers or sounding like experts. It's about curiosity, honesty, and growth. We talk about the things that no one says or is too scared to share. It's unfiltered vulnerability. Thank you for growing with us.